Auditing in a computerized environment. With the rapid development in technology in recent years, computer information systems have become visible, perhaps essential, for use even in small-scale business operations. Almost all entities now use the computers to some extent in their accounting systems. This widespread use of computers has offered new opportunities for professional accountants and has also created some challenging problems to the auditors. Regardless of the extent of computerization or the methods of data processing being used, the responsibility for the establishment and implementation of appropriate internal control systems rests with the management and those charged with governance. The auditor's responsibility is to obtain an understanding of the entity's internal control system to be able to assess the control risk and determine the nature, timing, and extent of the test to be performed. Characteristics of computer information systems. Computer information systems have essential characteristics that distinguish them from manual processing systems. First is lack of visible transaction trails. In a manual system, it is normally possible to follow a transaction through the system by examining source documents, entities' records, and financial reports. In a CIS environment, data can be entered directly into the computer system without supporting documents. Furthermore, records and files may not be printed and cannot be read without using the computer. The absence of these visible documents supporting the processing of transactions makes the examination of evidence more difficult. Consistency of performance. CIS performs functions exactly as programmed. If the computer is programmed to perform a specific data processing task, it will never get tired of performing the assigned task in exactly the same manner. Ease of access to data in computer programs. In a CIS environment, data in computer programs may be accessed and altered by unauthorized persons, leaving no visible evidence. Concentration of duties. Proper segregation of duties is an essential characteristic of a sound internal control system. However, because of the ability of the computer to process data efficiently, there are functions that are normally segregated in manual processing that are combined in a CIS environment. Systems-generated transactions. Certain transactions may be initiated by the CIS itself without the need for an input document. For example, interest may be calculated and charged automatically to customers' account balances on the basis of pre-authorized terms contained in a computer program. Vulnerability of data and program storage media. In a manual system, the records are written in ink on substantial paper. The situation is completely different in a CIS environment. The information on the computer can be easily changed, leaving no trace of the original content. Internal control in a CIS environment. Many of the control procedures used in manual processing also apply in CIS environment. Examples of such control procedures include authorization of transactions, proper segregation of duties, and independent checking. When the computer processing is used in significant accounting applications, internal control procedures can be classified into two types: general and application controls.
Organizational controls. Organizational controls are a plan of an organization with a clear assignment of authority and responsibility. In a CIS environment, the plan of an organization for an entity's computer system should include: number 1, segregation between the user and CIS department. CIS department must be independent of all departments within the entity that provide input data or that use output generated by the CIS. The function of CIS department is to process transactions. Functions within the CIS department should be properly segregated for good organizational controls. The entity's organizational structure should provide for definite lines of authority and responsibility within the CIS department. Systems development and documentation controls. Software development as well as changes must be approved by the appropriate level of management and the user department.
Access control is a security technique that can be used to regulate who or what can view or use resources in a computing environment. Access to the computer should be limited only to operators and other authorized employees. The last general control is monitoring controls. These are actions performed to provide assurance that CIS controls are working effectively as planned.
Application control are designed to ensure the integrity of the accounting records, which means these are designed to provide a reasonable assurance that application control related to the procedures used to initiate, records, process, and report transaction or other financial data. There are three common concepts in the application control. The first one is control over inputs. Control over input activities are designed to ensure that input is authorized complete, accurate, and timely are referred to as input control. The second one is control over processing. Processing control exists to ensure that all data inputs is processed correctly and that data files are appropriately updated accurately in a timely manner. Then the last one is the output control. Output control exists to ensure that all data is processed and that output is distributed only to prescribed authorized users.
Test of control in a CIS environment involves evaluating the client's internal control policies and procedures to determine if they are functioning as intended. So yung test of control sa CIS environment ay kapareho lamang ng test of control sa manual processing environment where it still evaluate the client's internal control to determine the effectiveness and efficiency of entity's operation. In testing application control, may dalawang approach. Una, auditing around the computer, and yung pangalawa, computer-assisted audit techniques. So, sa auditing around the computer, it involves examination of documents and reports to determine the reliability of the system. So in this approach, it's also known as black box approach, where it is similar to testing control in manual control structures. So sa approach na to, ini-ignore ng auditor yung client's data processing procedure at nagpa-focus lang sa input documents and CIS output, where kapag nag-reconcile yung input document and CIS output, ibig sabihin, na-process ng computer yung transaction accurately. However, meron siyang weakness. Auditing around the computer can be used only if there are visible input documents and detailed output. So, magagamit lang yung approach na to if visible yung input and output. Where, in other words, matitrace ng auditor yung transaction back and forth.
Another testing application controls that the auditor may use is the computer-assisted audit techniques. When computerized accounting systems perform tasks for which no visible evidence is available, it may be impracticable for the auditor to test manually. Such is usually the case when the entity uses advanced CIS. Such is usually the case when the entity uses advanced CIS. Consequently, the auditor will have to audit directly the client's computer program using CAATs. This is also called the white box approach. CAATs are computer programs and data which the auditor uses as part of the audit procedures to process data of audit significance contained in an entity's information systems. Some of the commonly used CAATs include test data, integrated test facility, and parallel simulation. The test data technique is primarily designed to test the effectiveness of the internal control procedures which are incorporated in the client's computer program. The objective of the test data technique is to determine whether the client's computer programs can correctly handle valid and invalid conditions as they arise. When using integrated test facility, the auditor creates dummy or fictitious employee or other appropriate unit for testing within the entity's computer system. When using integrated test facility, the auditor must be alert to the danger of contaminating the client's master files. Parallel simulation requires the auditor write a program that simulates key features or processes of the program under review. The simulated program is then used to reprocess transactions that were previously processed by the client's program.
Other CAATs. Highly complicated computerized systems sometimes do not retain pertinent audit trails and would require capturing of audit data as transactions are processed. Under this scenario, the CAATs available to the auditor may include: Number 1. Snapshots. Snapshots. These techniques involves taking a picture of a transaction as it flows through the computer systems. Such a technique permits an auditor to track data and evaluate the computer processes applied to the data. System control audit review files. This involves embedding audit software modules within an application system to provide continuous monitoring of the system transactions. The information is collected into the special computer file that the auditor can examine.